Oh,
Okay, well, hurry up and do a video. Stand over
No,
there where, wait.
I do have to go because I have another minute.
It's nice to meet
Thank
you.
you, sir. Good.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you're gonna be late.
So,
Is it dark out there? I got
no, not yet.
I have to go before dark.
It's
much
not
longer?
even
Well,
close
it's
to
only
dark.
6:30, you know it don't get dark for another
It's
45 minutes.
fine.
Pardon
You
me?
can stay here?
Oh,
I can leave. I don't have to talk to you if you want.
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
I'll.
come on, we got, okay, you got 3
You want-
minutes.
3 minutes? I can, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, can you wait 3 minutes?
Well, no, I got to go.
Okay,
Maybe some.
Yeah,
Well, around home.
Yes, we got you.
okay,
Are you good?
yes.
But I do have to go.
Do I,
I got another commitment.
I didn't leave anything important in your car, did I?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, but,
Okay.
thank you for taking care of her. Appreciate it. I get to go.
he's in the witness protection program.
That's
He's gotta
right,
go.
that's right, that's right. Sorry.
So,
Okay, wait a minute, do I need to sit over there so you can have us all?
it's fine.
close?
It doesn't, it's,
I'm just
Oh, we're gonna have
Don't worry
to
about
take
it.
a picture without the president?
my name's David Esrati. I'm running for Dayton City Commission. You have a choice this November, and it is whether to keep the 2 incumbents or to make a change. It doesn't really do you any good to vote for just one of the challengers, because it takes 3 votes on the city commission to make anything happen. And we've seen when either Mayor Turner or Mayor Lightsell didn't have any support, and things just didn't really change. Now, came April this year, the end of April, the FBI and the Department of Justice announced that there was a culture of corruption in Dayton and indicted only 4 black men as the cause of all the problems we've had in Dayton. Now, you and I both don't believe that, and I was there filming. I said, excuse me. I said, you mean to say you only can find 4 black men to blame for all this culture of corruption? Wright State, they sold 130 million, and I didn't see you indicting anybody or perp walking anybody there.
Amen. That's
And
good.
here you come after people for 20,000 or 50,000, and they looked at me like I was the Antichrist. So I've been asking this question for a long time, and where is the money going? And it's actually right in front of you. I mean, if you bought a building for $450,000, would you sell it to me for $10? Because if you would, you're gonna be my new best friend, right? But that's what we've done over and over downtown. And it, not only is it bad from the standpoint that it's your and my money that they're spending to buy this building and then selling it for $10,
Thank you.
but they are selling it to somebody who is competing with a business that's been here all along. So on Wayne Avenue, for instance, the new Troll Pub
Yeah.
with 200-something seats and all that parking is competing with Roost and Corner Kitchen and Press and Lucky's and Trolley Stop and Blind Bob's and Lily's and Oregon Express. That's not fair. It's not fair when you take our tax dollars and make it unfair and harder for us to make a living in this town. It's already hard enough. And these people are from out of town, and they've done this over and over and over, and they say,
So, Trolley, I'm sorry.
I didn't follow that completely about the,
the city bought the old Supply One, huge supply
Yeah,
building
okay,
on
the
Wayne
city
Avenue,
bought
for
it? Okay.
$450,000.
Uh-huh.
Had no purpose for it. They sold it to some developers out of Louisville for
Kentucky.
$10
They did?
and gave them Garden Station for free.
and those are the people that put in that bar?
They put in the bar and they put in the apartments and everything, so they made an investment. But I'm saying that they're now competing with all these businesses that had to pay full price for their buildings and had to rehab them and go through all this.
Right.
And it's just not fair.
Okay,
So there's been a lot of things that haven't been fair in this community over a long period of time. But that has just got to stop. So if you look on my campaign literature on the back, I have 5 issues, okay? The front is just an explainer that, look, if you re-elect either the 2 incumbents, nothing changes. Daryl's sitting there by himself and can't do anything. But if you let Shanice Turner-Sloss and myself, all of a sudden Nan and Jeff actually have to work with other people, because right now Nan just tells them what to do and they do it, okay? Now, the 5 issues on the back are what I think is most important. And the first one, and people say, oh, that's a county thing. And I'm like, no, that's a human rights thing. But our jail is unsafe. I don't want your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, your aunt, your uncle. I don't want anybody from the city of Dayton going into that jail for for a minor misdemeanor, or because they're mentally ill or sick, because the jail is our biggest mental health facility, I don't want them going in there and risking dying. And that's a very real risk in that jail. Or being tortured. I mean, they literally have pepper sprayed at least 2 people while in restraints. That's torture. And if one of those people had asthma, they'd be dead. That is unsatisfactory. That is not, you're innocent until proven guilty. You don't get tortured in jail or maimed or hurt or anything else. So I already talked about the tax dollars shouldn't be put out to compete with everybody. I feel strongly that when I first moved to Dayton, we had over 500 sworn officers. Dayton hasn't gotten any smaller in terms of amount of land we have to cover, but now we're down to 300 and change. But you know what's grown in the meantime? Private police forces. Miami Valley Hospital has one. Sinclair has one. UD has one. Grandview has one. The Metro Parks have one. And guess what? None of those people report to anybody you elect or anybody you have any oversight over. Do you remember when Samuel DeBose got shot in Cincinnati by a University of Cincinnati police officer on a traffic stop?
Oh,
Shot.
yeah.
Yep.
Traffic stop. Got shot dead. That police officer didn't work for anybody. He worked for the university. That should have been the end of these private police officers. You want a real police officer, you pay the city of Dayton for a real police officer, and they report to us, and we assign them to you as you need them. But we know they're trained properly, we know they're accountable to somebody, and we know they know the law. Okay? This has got to stop. Only rich people should not have police protection, okay? Our stuff's just as important as premiers. The other thing that's insane is I bought my house in 1986 for $14,500.
What neighborhood?
South Park.
Okay.
You shouldn't have to be able to buy a house for less than the price of a car, okay? That's just not the way it's supposed to work, right? Now, I know there are people that are using their cars as houses, but that's a whole nother story, okay? But you shouldn't be able to buy a house that cheap. And you still, to this day, can buy houses in the city of Dayton for under $20,000 if you have cash. Because banks won't even loan for a house under $50,000. And bank insurance companies won't insure them. So why do they reevaluate your taxes every 3 years? Why do we waste the money doing that and telling you your house went up because she put a new roof and painted her house, so your house is worth more? Or she got foreclosed on, the bank kicked her out, and the scrappers came in and took all the copper out of her house and the heating and the air and everything else, and the house has gone to hell in a bucket. Your taxes should go down? Does that make any sense? Because she got a better phone, should you have to pay more for your phone? No. But that's how we roll around here, and it's stupid. The funding for schools was ruled unconstitutional 21 years ago. We pay Tyler Technologies millions of dollars to come out here and do these bogus evaluations. And the way I was taught, the only real valuation you have is when you actually pay for something. If you'll pay me 25 cents, this is worth 25 cents. If you pay me $20, it's worth $20, right? Depends where you are, right? If you're in Costco and you're going out, they got 25 cents. If you're at the Dragon Statement, they'll charge you $3 for this, right? But this idea that the value changes arbitrarily, it causes gentrification. It stops investment. It's unfair that the people who fix up their houses, their tax values go up. Now that might be fine in the suburbs where prices don't vary that much and things are pretty steady, but the city of Dayton is almost entirely a hub zone, which means a historically underutilized business zone according to SBA. It's supposed to get incentives, and we've tried all these incentives from federal programs and things to jumpstart the economy, and we hear about economic development. It's all bullshit. Flat out bullshit. You fix up your house, you should be getting a tax cut in the city of Dayton in some of these areas where the houses are all vacant and the neighborhood's suffering, okay? Not a tax increase. The people who should be taxed more are the people who have vacant homes who are sitting on them and letting them rot. So we need to reevaluate that whole equation. And the last thing that I say on here, and again, this is not a local issue, okay? But I'm sorry, we have too many governments in Montgomery County. Can anybody explain why the city of Moraine, with 6,000 people, needs a city manager making $145,000 a year? That's $23 and change for everybody who lives in Moraine, from baby on up, right? They give you, you pay that much for just the city manager, never mind the police chief and all the other stuff they got. You pay that much, they had to come out and shovel your walk at least once a year, right? This is insane. It makes it very expensive to live here. And then they've come up with crazy income tax differences between every municipality. So as a small businessman, I can't calculate how much to pay if I'm a heating and air guy. And I got guys, one day you're working in Huber Heights, one day you're working in Harrison Township, different tax rates. And then on top of it, they allowed this thing called Austin Landing down south there, real pretty intersection and everything, and they built all these tall buildings and moved jobs from downtown down there. Well, it's a township. They're not allowed to charge an income tax. But these sneaky folks figured out a way with 3 municipalities coming together, and they created a thing called a JED. And it's a Joint Economic Development District. And they charge an income tax of 2%. But only on the people that work in the retail establishments. You work in a tall building, you got a white collar on, you don't pay an income tax. That's about as un-American as it gets, but that's the kind of crap that we've gotten out of the people we've been electing that come out of the Montgomery County Democratic Party and the Montgomery County Republican Party, who are in cahoots to make sure, like, judges don't run against each other and things. I mean, they hand out the cards right there as you go in. Here's this endorsed slate. And people just follow it along, check it off. It's up to you to go out and tell your neighbors, tell your friends, it's time for a change. I can't do it all by myself. I can't get the money they get. You look at the donors, who is it? Premier, CareSource.
All right, you can't compete against them.
Oh, how many of you have ever given a political donation of over $1,000 to anybody? I don't know any citizens that do that, right? Do you know when they ran issue 9 where they told us it was for the kids? The average donation to that campaign was $17.85. Not like $17.85 like you go buy a Happy Meal for your 4 kids, right? $1,785 was the average donation. And you know who the donors were? UD, Premier, CareSource, big money, and some big corporations. And then all the vendors for the city of Dayton, because you had to pay to play. And there is a culture of corruption in this community. And I've been talking about it and exposing things. I've been putting videos up. I've got a blog with over 2,900 posts. It is crazy corrupt in this town. And it's time for it to stop. If you need an example, you go to Esrati.com/man of mystery. And it is the most bizarre story you've ever heard. We elected a guy to our school board, Adil T. Bagirov. Nobody checked into him. He ran unopposed. He became the board president. He got computers for the kids. He ran the contract on that. You're not supposed to be, as a school board member, you're not supposed to do purchasing. But he ran the contract on that. He bought 120 new buses. He ran the contract on that too. And the buses have a 7-year life expectancy, but he bought a 10-year warranty. Now you're saying, so that's kind of silly, but why would he do that? Well, guess one of his businesses is trucking. And he buys his trucks from the same people he buys the buses from. And the state has a rule about buses. You buy them on the state contract, the price is set, but the extras, the warranties, you can do, that's in a separate negotiation. So he did that. He sold off Patterson Kennedy's site, which was a greenfield, which was absolutely pristine, prime real estate. You all remember where Patterson Kennedy was, right?
Yeah.
He sold that to CareSource for $1 million. It's funny because there's a parking lot behind Mass, a block away, and it's one of the built sites where they imploded the buildings and just paved over, so it's not a green field, it's not all prepared and shovel ready. That sold for $2 million just a few years before. And he's saying, it's a great deal and everything, except for one thing. He owns a home health company. And guess who he gets money from for his home health aides? So I bring all this up, right? And it turns out he's got a bunch of shell corporations in other states. He's got other property that he's bought. And he said he lived on Maryland Avenue in a $10,000 house that was like 1,300 square feet with his wife and his 2 kids. Oh, and his business partner was registered to vote there too. Turns out he didn't live there at all because the neighbor said, no, we never saw his Jag in the backyard.
saying.
Okay, he bought a $500,000 house in the Vandalia Butler School District for $455,000 through one of his other shell companies. So he didn't even live in the school district, which means you can't be on the school board, and they would not remove him. Until on election day, I looked at his registration and he had it switched. I said, now will you remove him? And they said, no. I'm like, really? So the next day, I'm on it again. I'm calling the Secretary of State, the AG, I'm calling the Board of Elections, the prosecutor, nobody's gonna do anything. So I put on my blog, I'm gonna file a mandamus action the next day at noon if he hasn't resigned. He resigned at 11:30. These people would not even touch this. This is par for the course in Dayton. And if you keep voting for those incumbents, I might be crazy, I might be insane, I might be a loudmouth, you might not like me. But I guarantee you, I'm gonna take everything I got to make your neighborhood as successful as my neighborhood, where houses that sold for literally $10,000 4 years ago sold for $210 in one day. Because that's the house right behind my office. That's what's happening in my neighborhood. We have Shakespeare in the Park, put on by the neighbors. We have hot toddy parties. We have porch patio and deck parties.
Wait a minute, hot toddy party.
Hot toddy parties in
Okay, I don't know
December.
when that is.
Yeah, we have chili cook-offs. We have a really amazing neighborhood. And you know what we realized? I said, we gotta stop marketing this place as you're buying an old house. A Victorian. Everything was before me was Victorian, this. I said, screw that. People wanna live there because the people in the neighborhood make it great. And we've just gone from there. We've had 11 years of Shakespeare in the Park. They had Nerf gun fight out there in the park the other day. Just everybody come in and Nerf gun. We've had flash bombs to walk your dog. We do these things as a neighborhood, and people want to live there. Now I'm going to tell you one other thing. Premier paid for 20 years for us to have 2 community-based police officers, real police officers, Dayton police officers, to patrol our neighborhood.
Who paid
They
for
had
it?
to pay for
Premier,
that?
you know why they did that?
Health partners?
Premier Health,
Uh-huh.
Miami Valley, because we're right there next to them. Because they wanted to protect their shit. So they paid to have 2 police officers patrolling. And you know what? They stopped the moment issue 9 passed because they said they were gonna hire more police officers. And you know what? We were okay by then. But it's still, we need to have community-based police officers in every neighborhood.
Every neighborhood, yes.
And there are 65 neighborhoods. And you ain't gonna do that with 330 sworn officers. Ain't gonna happen. But if we get those UD and Miami Valley Hospital and Sinclair Police back, all these people back on the force and they pay for them, we'll have enough officers to spend some time out in the neighborhoods and do the work that it takes. So, again, it takes 3 votes to make anything happen on the city commission. You can vote for Matt and Chris. Matt has been on there forever and he never says anything. That's the best way not to piss anybody off. I say things,
That's right.
okay? Chris, just they're both very nice guys, happy-go-lucky, but they are not getting it done.
Really? You put this on here?
Mm-hmm. What? What? It says current Dayton City Commission, the Queen and her minions,
Right.
because that's what they are. And they have all the power, and there's Daryl, all by himself. And he's got no power, but you change the 3 neighborhood activists, all of a sudden we got 3 votes, and all of a sudden, the Queen and Jeff Nims, and Jeff's a very nice guy, but he doesn't do anything either, other than do what exactly Nan tells him to do. So,
Who is Shanice Turner?
Shanice Turnstloss used to work in the city.
Yeah, she used to be our, she used to
Neighbor-
come in
yeah.
before Berletta. She was.
She's about this tall, full of piss and vinegar. She's a little pistol.
Yeah.
Anyway, she works out at the base.
Daryl Fairchild kind of co-campaigns with her.
They did last time.
Yeah.
Okay. But,
Yeah, I tried to get Daryl to come when he was running that.
well,
time.
it's hard for him to
Show.
get, it's a little hard for him to get here.
Yeah.
A place, but that's my pitch. I'm sticking to it. I appreciate your time.
So what's the Amandine Act you said you had to file for him to resign? What's that?
I threatened to file a mandamus action.
Mandamus.
Yeah, it's technically, I was kind of bluffing because I didn't have standing to file a mandamus action. To file a mandamus action, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm getting to be a pretty good one on my own. You have to,
We see.
you have to have standing. So since I was not directly affected by it, like I hadn't run against him or something, I really couldn't file it, but he didn't know that. So,
Voted against.
Okay, so you-
Adil Bagirov.
Oh,
And then he
okay.
ran for,
Okay.
he ran for county recorder and lost. And now that house, he's got up for sale for $655,000, he's moving out of town.
Mm.
The man was a total con man.
That's a con, we
So
don't need
what's
that in
going on with the
office.
school board now with the hiring of the city
Which
manager?
is, it's a culture of corruption, baby. You're in with the monarchy, you get to do pretty much what you want. They should never hire Gary Ditzstein. And I didn't put a public records request in, but the paper and I are sort of working together on that. And the paper put one in. And they said, let's see all these other applicants and the posting that you supposedly had, because it probably doesn't exist.
It didn't do it.
Probably not, knowing the way things work. Because literally, they're paying him $120,000 a year. He's taking a pay cut to come from Wright State.
Why?
Okay? And I can guarantee you there were more competent people you could hire to be a business manager for $120,000 a year at Dayton Public Schools.
I'll take it.
There you go.
Why, what was he doing at Wright State? Why would he leave Wright State, take a pay cut?
Okay, so for the last 4 years, he has been the interim vice president of student affairs. He is the person over student activities, dorms, student conduct sort of things that are, that sort of stuff. And he was not getting promoted to be the actual. So the writing was kind of on the wall that he wasn't going to get promoted. And Wright State is in a disaster because they hired him. Well, the board was doing a lot of illegal things, and the state wouldn't prosecute any of them. And after that strike, their enrollment figures dropped through the floor, and they're going to have some more layoffs. They said she retired, the president. That's not what happened. She got fired. But they never fire university presidents. It's always a white glove treatment. You go
That
off.
was just in the news.
You go off into the sunset, and you keep getting paid. It's like we paid Rhonda Core for 2 years at Dayton Public Schools, and we paid David Lawrence for 2 years to go away. And there was no reason. David Lawrence should have been the superintendent. Do you know Mr. Lawrence? Great guy. Phenomenal educator. His scores at Thurgood went up 20 points in 3 years. No other principal has done anything close to that. He is a proven leader. And they didn't do anything. You need to sign it?
He wants you to sign.
I'll sign it.
Both of you.
Anyways, so, there's lots of these buyouts. And it's really, it's too bad that they happen. And it's almost criminal. So.
Like they say, it's not right, but it's not illegal either.
Oh, yeah, it's illegal. Wright State got fined, what was it? It was, $1 million, but nobody on the board got in trouble. So, you tell me how that happened, okay? I can tell you more stories about Wright State. I've published a lot of stuff about that as well. And really criminal behavior by the board. They set up a nonprofit subdivision called Double Bowler, which bought all this real estate. And they hired, as part of the Double Bowler staff, they hired Steve Austria, the former congressman, paying him $9,000 a month. Nobody knows what he did. The building they bought, the old Wright Pack Credit Union headquarters, they had no need for it, just like we had no need for the building on Wayne Avenue. They bought that from the guy who then got appointed to the board, Doug Thacker, the president of Wright Pack Credit Union. And Doug moved Wright Pack Credit Union across the street into Bob Mills's tower that was empty from CSC moving out. Bob Mills was a big donor to the university. And that's how that happens. Well, there was a moratorium from the state on buying any more real estate. And there was no need for any of that real estate. And Vishal Soin from Raj Soin and MTC Technologies, he was on the board. It's all named after him, the Vishal Soin complex.
Right.
I mean, it's just insane what they got away with. But nobody from the board got in trouble.
That's amazing. $1 million.
$1 million, that was the H-1B visas, and 3 of the people on the board was Nina Joshi, and she was hiring some of these H-1B visa people. And another was Michael Bridges with Peerless Technology. He was hiring people. And LexisNexis was, and now the guy who's from LexisNexis is the board president.
Oh.
How does this happen?
Oh, wow.
So,
I just.
it's all out there, and nobody does anything. How many times have you heard about the Dayton Development Coalition?
I heard about.
You hear about them all the time, how we're gonna create jobs for the region, and how we're all about transferring technology from the base and all this. These people are funded by all these municipalities around here. They toss over our tax dollars, no regulation over them, and then they get money from corporations that buy in. And like their CEO is making, at one point, was making $400,000 a year. And he hired Mike Turner's wife to do all their corporate materials. And nobody thought anything was wrong. But now they're gonna be talking about nonstop about how all the base people were aging and they need to replace them. And we gotta have all this, we gotta teach all these people real quick how to become government employees. No. That's not the job of local government or even, the federal government does fine at filling their own jobs, okay? Trust me, okay? And it's their own problem, they caused something. But they're gonna talk about how we gotta do all this stuff. No, we don't have to. All we gotta do is start figuring out how to pave our roads, pick up the trash, pick up the leaves, and have a police officer show up when you need him, and not shoot you, okay? That's really kind of all we gotta do. And it'd be nice if we had swimming pools again for the kids,
Oh, that would be nice.
because honestly, the fact that our kids aren't learning to swim is absolutely deplorable. And I first saw this when I was in the Army. I went through Special Forces School, and they had 300 of us lined up for the swim test. And the Army at that time, this was back in the early 80s, was about 50% African American. And so about 50% of the 300 guys lined up were African American. And I watched them, every one of them, get in the pool and sink to the bottom, except for maybe 6. That's how they filtered out African Americans from being in Special Forces. They all failed the swim test. And I couldn't believe my eyes, because I grew up in an integrated community where we had pools, and everybody learned how to swim. In fact, in the high school, you had to swim. And we tore down Roosevelt, which had 2 pools.
That's right.
And
What
now
was-
it's Roosevelt. Now they renamed.
Well, now they renamed that Roosevelt, but I mean, swimming, it really hit home when about 2 years ago, the guy who owns the grocery store up in my neighborhood, his son got caught in Eastwood Lake and drowned, 3 years old. And Majid went in there trying to get his son and almost drowned as well. I'm like, Majid, you can't swim? He said, no. I'm like, how do you become a grown man and you can't swim? To me, that's a fundamental life skill. And we shut down all our pools. Now the last one was Fairview, the outdoor, it's closing. Thank you very much. You take the hospital and you shut the pool down.
As long as they keep our pools here at the Northwest Recreational Center, is it still
Yeah,
going?
that's still, well, Princeton, yeah, it's still there, but indoor pools and outdoor pools are 2 different things.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about outdoor.
I'm talking about outdoor. There are no more outdoor. No, Fairview was the last one.
I used to swim in Mallory all the time.
Oh,
Mallory
what
was-
about Mallory?
Mallory was
That's
beautiful.
where I
What was
stayed.
that, Bomberg?
Bomberg.
No, not
Baumberger had one.
And what about that
so did-
one?
So did Stuart Patterson. So did Burkham Park.
Burkham, that's what I was thinking.
You know, they had pools.
They
What do we
have
have for our kids anymore? I went out and hung basketball nets. The last time I ran, I hung free green basketball nets. I hung over 500 free basketball nets in the last 6 years. And the city finally got guilted because the basketball courts were a mess, and they put $1 million into fixing them. And Nan put out an edict. She says she sees a green net on a city court, somebody's getting fired in Parks and Rec. So I made change. I figured it was cheaper to buy basketball nets than it was to buy political signs. Just those kids don't vote, but they do now. So we'll see what happens, see if they remember me.
That's right.
Anyways,
You know what, I like him, okay, you making me reconsider my voting,
well, good.
yeah,
Now you got to go tell all your friends.
yeah.
Check out my videos online. You know, there's a YouTube channel. I've got neighborhood meetings. I've got all the political things. Check out my blog, Esrati.com. You can read about Dr. Bagiroff. You can read about the Pepper Spring people in the jail. You can read about your tax dollars being squandered on the troll pub. You can read about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna check
I
it
didn't know
out.
that about the troll pub.
I didn't know about that either.
I wanna go back in there again.
I will never set foot in there ever and spend a dime.
Which one?
The
Where?
troll
The
pub
troll pub,
on Wayne.
Where's
Wayne
that?
Avenue. Used to
Wayne
be-
Avenue.
Across from the Oregon District.
Yep.
That old big building that had the mural on one side.
Yes.
$10.
Okay.
And they sold 2 buildings on East 3rd Street, right down from the market. They sold them for $10 too. And they still own, they paid $500,000 for the old Keep Society Bank building next to Winters Tower, next to Bank, Kettering Tower. They bought that building, we own that, they paid $500,000. There was a developer who was interested in it, and he thought it was worth about $300,000, and they outbid it. So, I mean, when you're competing with government, you can't win. They take all the money they want. It's like when I go and file public lawsuits about secret meetings, I'm fighting lawyers that can go on and on and on, and they just try to drain me.
Mhm.
You know, take my time, take my money,
Right.
and I can't get it back. But I believe in principles over everything else. So I'm sorry, you have a secret meeting to discuss closing date in public schools, and you tell me I can't come on in it, we're going to court. And that's been going for 2 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Meters running on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I should get somebody to take it pro bono.
Wow.
No, you know, you can't even hire a lawyer in town because they don't want to work for the city or the county or the contract. It's like, you have to get a lawyer from out of town. That's how bad it is in this town. Somebody told Paul Woody, he used to be in Department of Planning, told me the first time I ran, he said, in Dayton, you need a herd to be heard. And that was the best advice I ever got, and I just never got my herd together. So,
How long have you been trying? You've been.
I ran the first
A
time,
long time.
I ran the first time against Clay Dixon for mayor,
Okay.
and people confused me and Mike Turner.
Oh.
And then Turner won, so it was Turner and Dixon going on to the general, and Mark Henry stepped down. So I switched and ran for the commission, and that's when Dixon took me outside trying to beat me up, because I was talking about the $28,000
He's
he
about to put
raised.
hands on you.
Oh, he broke his watch on my head, tore my shirt.
What?
I didn't hit him back. Clay and I get along great now, but it made the front page. But I was talking about where did he get his money from. I said, maybe it's when someone wants to build a landfill on the west side.
Oh,
You should have
Lord.
seen the steam come
Well,
out
no
of his ears.
wonder.
What's with the landfill? What's
That
with
was-
the, and the being innocent now? There's no one knows.
Roush, the
Oh,
company
Lord.
got charged, but Roush didn't. But let me tell you, that man made out on the hole on Ludlow Street where the Dayton Daily News. He ended up owning the building and trying to sell it for $900,000. He didn't even finish the job. They had to pay somebody else to finish it. And the people they gave $2 million to, from out of town, from Indiana, they disappeared. Shelley Dickstein is the worst businesswoman ever in the face of the earth. She spent over $5 million trying to build a Kroger at the Wayne in Wyoming. Got all the buildings after 3 rounds of options, where she was paying people for an option to buy the house, just giving them money. And then went to Kroger, I got all the property, and they said, we don't have a contract.
We all need to go, but what's with the Kroger's being closed on Needmore? Closing that up from the people.
Do you think Kroger scares?
No, because they're the elite.
People walk to that Kroger. I feel
So-
so bad
so I
for
got-
them.
I got one other thing, I didn't mention this. So I got a proposal out there to make RTA free. Now here's the crazy thing. People say, oh, you can't do that.
Oh, you went too far. How do you
Hold on, let me explain something to you. We pay for 90% of RTA through either federal tax dollars that we pay into or through our sales tax. There's a half-cent sales tax you pay in Montgomery County, and everything you buy that funds RTA. So you're already paying for it. You know how much they get from fairs? From putting money in the, less than 10% of their revenue, so it's less than $10 million. And then when you figure out how much it costs to secure all the money and count it and account for it and all that, there's about 10% of overhead there. So you're down to $9 million. Now, if you think about it, the bus takes longer sitting there idling, burning fuel, right? While you're arguing about the thing or making money. Whereas if the bus just runs and you hop on and you hop off, it goes really quick and there's less waste and you can run the buses longer. But here's the last straw, right? Think of all that. The last straw is they got a free bus. It runs up and down every 10 minutes, up and down Brown Street downtown, does a loop. It's called the Flyer.
The Flyer, yes.
I call it the White Flyer because it's in the white part of town. But they got that, and it runs just fine. It's okay for the free bus for white people, but the poor people who need to get to the grocery store or the hospital because they tore down their hospital too, or get to, their job, because cars are your second biggest expense after housing, and sometimes in Dayton your car is more expensive than your house. But if we're going to give money in the name of economic development, I want to give it to people who actually earn a living, who ride the bus because they have to get to a job or they need to get to a grocery store, instead of giving $10 million to do the arcade again for UD and Premier and the rest of these people. Screw that. I want to put the money in the people's hands. And you know what? The final part of this equation, they used to put advertising on the outside of buses. They stopped doing that. I place a bet they could get $9 million a year for advertising if they knew how to sell it right. And I've been talking to the new number 2 at RTA, and he's open. We'll see what happens. But I place a bet I can get them the money to make up for the fares, and we can have free buses so people can get to work, can get downtown. And you know what kind of an economic development engine that free bus is? I mean, it's done in other countries and other places. But when you think about the cost of parking, that you drive a car downtown and then you've got to park the car, the space it takes to park a car. Whereas if you could just take the bus for free, you don't have to deal with that, and you can read and do work on your way into work. It changes everything. And it changes it for everybody, not just for a rich developer from out of town who's building things by the ballpark or building things in the Oregon district. And that's all they've given money to. Let's give the money to people. Thank you.
Shapiro still own the arcade?
Thank you.
Is what?
Robert Shapiro is still on the arcade. He used to own it. He was a lawyer.